Jai Guru, everybody.
Jai Guru.
Walks with me and he talks with me. He tells me I am his own, and the joy we share as we tarry there, none other has ever known.
Jai Guru, everyone.
Jai Guru.
Could you hear
Jai
that?
Guru.
Yes.
That voice, whose voice do you think that was? That beautiful, angelic
Drum roll, please.
voice.
Our very own
Somebody from the London Center.
Lauren.
Lauren, yes. Chris, you
Oh,
smashed it.
wow. Oh, my
That
God.
was Lauren. And who do you think was playing the guitar? That beautiful strumming, like none other, like George Harrison-esque.
Three chords, yeah.
yeah, Chris, that's what it was.
Our very own.
That indeed was me. We were trying to find a guitarist for months, but that's the best we could do. Anyway, it went down really well. We had our Christmas concert yesterday. Went beautifully. Lauren did superbly. She sung this one and Silent Night. How was it, Lauren?
It was such a beautiful day just to have everyone together in one space in the name of God and our gurus. It's just so heartwarming. It was wonderful. I really loved it.
So many people were asking me, where's that wonderful singer who sung Silent Night? And I was like, she's over there. But no, she was basically getting hounded by so many people asking her about her voice and choir and being able to sing at the center. And yeah, we're going to hopefully do more of that, aren't we, Lauren?
Yes, if you wish.
On this podcast. On this podcast as well.
Yeah, not on the podcast. But yeah, sorry, Mike, I butchered your intro, but I thought it was worth it because it happened to two of us yesterday.
Totally. Yeah. Go for it. So if the listeners are asking themselves, what did I tune into here? This is the podcast, Autobiography of a Yogi, line by line. And this is episode number 2. You might have heard our intro episode where we all introduced ourselves and why we're doing this and about the project. And today we want to start with the book. We're not going to start with chapter 1 yet. We are going to start with the title of the book, the cover, the back page, and then a few other things, like there are different editions of the book. How about the picture of Guruji? Where was it taken? Why was it chosen? Do we know why it was chosen? That might be a curveball I'm going to throw later. Then some other sections that come before the intro, like there is a section called the Spiritual Legacy, and we're gonna have a look at all of that. But let's start with the editions. So when Guruji wrote the Autobiography of a Yogi, he first published it, and he published it at a publishing house in New York, and he used the Philosophical Library in New York because they were publishing it, and the first 4 editions, they were all published through there before SRF started publishing themselves, and afterwards they would start publishing from Los Angeles. And there is also, interestingly, another edition that is called the Writer Edition that was actually printed in London. That was probably for logistical reasons. Yeah, Chris?
Yeah, I think just to, certainly not to interrupt this intro, but whenever I first joined, around about the time 2017-18, I think it was, there was a bit of raising of money going on for the new, all the new machines and the printing presses, if you guys recall, which looks so great. Like it was such a professional job, and I think they were upgrading from what they had before. So kudos to SRF and all the rest of it. Just whenever I joined, I thought, wow, this is a really well, organized, organization itself. So legacy of Yogananda, but they do everything themselves there. It's really fantastic to see.
Absolutely. And the editions, they also brought changes to the book. So compared to 1946, we have 20 additional pages now of photos, of new sections, a lot of new footnotes that weren't there initially that explain context. And there's a really nice section about the evolution of the autobiography after the year 1946, so after the first edition. And we got that from the yogananda.org website. And we're just going to read through that just to get some of the details. And Priyank, do you want to start reading?
Sure. SRF's editions are the only editions that incorporate all of the author's wishes for the final text of the Autobiography of a Yogi, personally conveyed by him to the editor he worked with from 1924 until his passing in 1952, and to whom he entrusted all matters pertaining to the publication of his works. Readers of the Autobiography of a Yogi sometimes inquire about the differences between the current edition and the first edition that was published in 1946. Lauren?
3 editions of Paramahansa Ji's autobiography appeared during his lifetime. In the 3rd edition, published in 1951, he made significant changes, revising the text thoroughly, deleting material, amplifying various points, and adding a new final chapter, the years 1940 to 1951, one of the longest in the book. Some further revisions made by him after the 3rd edition could not be incorporated until the publication of the 7th edition, which was released in 1956. The following publisher's note was printed in the 7th edition of Autobiography of a Yogi, giving the history of the author's wishes for the book. And it quotes, "This 1956 American edition contains revisions made by Paramhansa Yogananda in 1949 for the London, England edition, and additional revisions made by the author in 1951. In a note to the London edition, dated October 25, 1949, Paramhansa Yogananda wrote, "The arrangement for a London edition of this book has given me an opportunity to revise and slightly to enlarge the text. Besides new material in the last chapter, I have added a number of footnotes in which I have answered questions sent to me by readers of the American edition."
Later revisions made by the author in 1951 were intended to appear in the 4th 1952 American edition. At the time, the rights in Autobiography of a Yogi were vested in a New York publishing house. In 1946, in New York, each page of the book had been made into an electrotype plate. Consequently, to add even a comma requires that a metal plate of an entire page be cut apart and resoldered with a new line containing the desired comma. Because of the expense involved in resoldering many plates, the New York publisher did not include in the 4th edition the author's 1951 revisions. Wowzer. Priyank, do you want to jump in on a comment there?
Yeah, it's interesting because one of the previous the statement, what they called the gratitude sections where different newspapers the different newspapers acclaim books and things like that. One of the authors wrote that this text has become like Upanishads of the New Age. And Upanishads of the New Age is like it's scripture, basically. So scripture in India, scripture it's impossible to change or embellish scripture because it's recited by mantra. So you may not know this, but the Bhagavad Gita means the eternal song. So the eternal song is something it's composed in such a way that if you try to change a part of it, it wouldn't rhyme and it would go wrong. So it's passed down through generations just through sheer recital as a prayer. And Sanskrit is a very poetic, rhyming kind of language where if you change it, you'll know. So it can't be lost through the ages. And this, I think, SRF in these early years going through this extent of putting it on this metal, this metal print that they had, kind of, because English is not that type of language, is it? Because in English, we can, if we were to memorize English, we would definitely change things, especially one that's tens of thousands of words. So if Yogananda did this, then he would assure that this now scripture, which we actually, we have not acknowledged in our previous episode as well, in the intro episode, that it is a scripture, becomes so because it can't be altered. It is this is it, right? And I think that may have been the reason that they would have potentially gone to such expense, because of the history of how India doesn't alter religious scripture, as it were.
That's super interesting. This is the first time that I understand why it's so important that the Bhagavad Gita rhymes, because otherwise they would have altered it like the Bible, for example, right?
Yeah,
very interesting. I didn't know
you
that.
You speak a bit of Sanskrit, Greg.
Yeah, no one speaks Sanskrit.
Oh, sorry.
But, because it's like this old language, like no one speaks it, and if they do speak it, it's just my Sanskrit lecturer told me that it's just to be a bit snooty about like heritage and culture. No one speaks the language. It's a language that's lost in speech and communication as a means of communication with others, but in text and scholarly work, it's very much obviously alive. So in scholarly works, it's a living language, but it's not a living language in spoken. So you wouldn't just go around speaking Sanskrit to other professors, for example.
Right. only at the puja,
yeah, because you'd lose. This is a big segue. You'd lose context, because obviously after thousands of years of changes and evolution in societal structure and invasions and influence from other cultures and other languages, words mean now different things to what they did before, and that's one of the reasons why we have so many translations of the Bhagavad Gita, for example, and why they can mean so many different things. Like awesome. This is another segue on a segue. I don't know if am I allowed that?
Go for it. No, go for it.
For sure.
I insist. Yes.
In certain parts of India, and this is quite gruesome, be ready to be gruesomized. They, for one of the festivals, they cut off the head of an animal, and they sacrifice animals basically, which is not in keeping with obviously it's not in keeping with the scriptural things about non-violence and things like that. And so and then people justify it by saying, oh, it's in the scripture, it's in our mantra, we have to sacrifice this. And then one of the ISKCON pundits, he told us that the word for rice, or the grain of rice, or sacrificing food, is the same as an animal. So some people have taken it literal as an animal sacrifice, whereas the original intent was that to sacrifice or offer your food as an oblation, and then it's become this gruesome thing over the current, through the evolution of the language. But if you understand, one of those contradictions in India, you'll see lots of sacrifices during religious ceremonies, especially interestingly, especially in Bengal during Durga Puja and things like that.
Wow,
very interesting.
Nice. I'll continue.
What were we talking about again?
That was a really interesting segue.
Yeah.
Okay, so in late 1953, Self-Realization Fellowship (SRF) bought from the New York publisher all rights to in Autobiography of a Yogi. SRF reprinted the book in 1954 and 1955, the 5th and 6th editions. But during those 2 years, other duties prevented the SRF editorial department from undertaking the formidable task of incorporating the author's revisions on the electrotype plates. The work, however, has been accomplished in time for the 7th edition.
Amazing. Gotta imagine electrotype plates technology, and then for the London edition, they couldn't use the same plates, right? So they recreated all the plates, right? The second time probably. So they were able to do some changes. Amazing.
SRF probably has these plates somewhere, don't they? And they're like,
yeah. There should be like a SRF print shop museum or something like that. I'm not sure if that exists somewhere.
You know where they have like those deposits for future generations in case humanity is wiped out or something? What's that? I've forgotten what that's called. Did they put like the AoY
like the
in
capsule?
Yeah, the capsules. That's it. Did they? Am I just making this up, or do I think that they put the AoY in there? Autobiography of Yogi.
I mean, there are many.
Probably,
There
I
are
probably
many.
dreamt it.
Yeah, we should do one. Make our
I
own
think I don't
capsule.
think that would be using space efficiently, would it? If they would put all the printing plates in there, they would probably just put a USB drive.
Yeah, let's
USB
put.
drive.
We can put all our podcast episodes as well on there.
Yes, I think that would be very important.
I think in the future, it's just like
you create a new
the
civilization on a new planet. Good thing.
This is the model podcast for all the autobiographies of saints and sages around the world and universe.
I'd be okay with that. I like it. I'm gonna read the last section. Say again.
Getting ahead of ourselves.
Oh yeah. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
I'm going to finish the last section. It says, all of the changes, deletions, and additions between 1946 and 56 were made at Paramahansa's request. Other editorial revisions, which were in all cases quite minor, were made later, according to guidance given by him before his passing to his longtime editor, Taramata, who had worked closely with him for over 25 years, and in whom he placed his full trust for posthumous publication of his writings in accord with his instructions. And that Taramata will also be mentioned later, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. That will be for another episode. Chris?
I want to know, and this is directed at Illy, you, Mike, and Priyank.
Oh,
and our listeners, watchers. Have you guys read all of the editions?
No, I only read probably the first edition and this edition, the current edition.
Well, I wonder if we have anybody out there that's like read every single one.
I got told off for quoting the first edition once.
Did you?
Why?
Yeah,
because the Samadhi poem is different, I think, in the first edition to the latest. And so anyway, so I was for a service I probably read the first. I didn't know it was the first edition. I thought this was before I knew about these editions. I just bought the book on the Play Store, and that isn't the current 13th edition. It's one of the earlier editions. So I bought that and then I quoted it, and then there's 3 lines that are different, or words arrangement, slap on the wrist. And then important lesson in there for me, because I presume they were all the same, and we probably, all listeners probably do presume that they're the same, but they're not. There's some significant, not significant, they're mostly minor. But if you're going to read a poem such as the Samadhi poem, and this is the poem that Guruji describes his experience in cosmic consciousness in that chapter of the Autobiography of Yogi. There's a couple of words in there that are different, and each word is quite profound. So if you're gonna memorize it, Guruji tells us to memorize it, then you've got to memorize it, the right words. So it is important in a way.
I understand. My additional awareness was also pretty low until recently. And I just made an experience today, in preparation for this episode. Priyank told me, Michael, buy the latest version of the Autobiography of a Yogi, and I did. I got the latest version, and it happened so that one section we were going to talk about was called "The Worldwide Acclaim." That was in the 2019 edition. It's not any longer in the 2022 edition. So I already saw a difference there. Yeah, Priya?
So can I correct you? Sorry, Mike, to have to correct you.
Okay.
So we're both reading the 13th edition. All SRF books that are printed by Self-Realization Fellowship are the 13th edition, which were 1998. But the prints are different. So this current print that you're reading is 1922, and that is where things like they can change the order or inclusions of, for example, where they changed. So I've got the 1999 print, and I thought this was the most latest one, but Mike beat me to it, and London Centre doesn't have the latest one apparently. And Mike's got, he's within touching distance from the press office, so he must have just picked it hot off the press, literally, Mike. So anyway, so Mike's got the 2022 print. reprint of the book, and that has got some different things in there in the way it's structured, especially. So we will be in our podcast going from that print, and the print that I first received when this book was first given to me was the 2001 reprint, which is why it looks so different to the one that was current. That looks a bit like this. Anyway.
So you're saying same content but different?
Yeah. So the content in the actual text, actual chapters, etc., is exactly the same, but they've got liberty to change what's on the back page, for example. So if you compare the back page to the one that's 20 years ago, they've mostly quoted the former UN Assistant General Secretary of Costa Rica, Dr. Robert Mueller, but that is not in the current edition. So they've got, current print, we need to get our terminology correctly, the current print.
Prints, editions.
Yeah, print, reprint or edition is the thing. And halfway through this podcast, if they reprint another one, then we'll have a decision to make as to what to do. I suggest we don't start again.
Excellent.
Yeah.
The next thing we want to look at is the title. How did Guruji come up with this title? Honestly, it's hard to know. I don't know myself, but we found a section in Phil Goldberg's book about it. And the interesting thing that he mentions there is that he had a different title. I think the working title was the Yogi Christ of India. Is that correct, Priyank?
Yep.
And it later, as he worked on it, turned into the Autobiography of a Yogi. So that would have been also an interesting title. And I guess that kind of goes hand in hand with one of the reasons why he's writing this whole book is because he promised, it was said by Lahiri Mahashaya, right, that Yogananda will write a book, a spiritual novel about what happened there, how Kriya Yoga was going to be
and about him as well, right? So he
stopped, him.
Biography about him, and obviously we have many chapters dedicated to that. Yeah, Lauren?
I think it's quite telling as well, the fact that he's called it Autobiography of a Yogi. He didn't put his name in the title, and I think that's very reflective of his humble nature, but also of the fact that perhaps, he is a yogi, just like the rest of us can be. There's nothing. Obviously, there is something extremely special about him. We all feel that, but I suppose for him also, he's saying, this is available for you also to lead this sort of life as a yogi. So perhaps that's what he was also indicating in that title. Obviously, I don't know, but yeah.
Absolutely. Priya?
Yeah, and Phil Goldberg also interestingly says, so obviously, as Mike said, that he was gonna title it something like, according to Phil Goldberg, My Experiences with the Yogi Christs of India and Other Saints. So, but when when Laurie Pratt, Dharamata was stenographing and typing the book, converting his handwritten and spoken words, then apparently at one point, his personal memoir blended with the Yogi Christ element, and hence then it's not just about the Yogi Christs. I don't know how many, was it 10, 15 chapters that are dedicated to the saints of other saints that are not part of his lineage, for example. But if he's got personal elements, then it does become an autobiography, and perhaps then he had to title it Autobiography of a Yogi rather than a biography about yogis.
I imagine back, 100 years ago or so, this title, Yogi Christ, may be somewhat controversial and maybe kind of difficult to comprehend for many people, certainly in this quote unquote West world, where Christ is Jesus Christ, and that's the identification with the two. Whereas maybe in India, Krishna, Christ, this word has maybe a different meaning. So the idea behind that, to me, trying to explain to somebody today who's very rooted in the Christian belief, still would find that difficult to actually wrap their head around. So that maybe that was consulted to some point to say, hey, like in the US, this might be a little bit tricky to digest. Like, but Autobiography of a Yogi, hey, that's something I could pick up off the shelf, and I know what I'm probably going to get from that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I do think you're right with it might have been controversial back in the day. I mean, or people might have not known at all what a yogi was and might have been intrigued by the title. Either way, I liked what Lauren said earlier, that there is basically, he's a yogi, so there is other yogis out there, and he just gives the account of himself and his life, which is very humble. Let's move on to the cover. So the cover prominently has the title on top, then it has the name of the author, Paramhansa Yogananda, the picture, and then the emblem on the bottom. And one of the things that Priyank mentioned that stands out, but it is very beautiful. The font that they use to write the title is pretty beautiful in this latest edition, especially
Print.
Yeah, it is print. Yeah, I should stop saying edition. In this print, because especially the eyes have little lotus flowers above them, which I find is a really nice touch. And then they have this orange background with this Indian style pattern. Really, really nicely done, and it's different than the prints before them.
I think I would just comment again, if I was trying to get somebody's attention, that grabs my attention, because they've just plainly cut Paramhansa Yogananda's image, which so many people have said, wow, the eyes just grab you, they draw you in, and the title, you see the clear differentiation between the two. So yeah, it's probably an improvement on that one, just to try to get people as they're walking past on a bookshelf. Lauren? Which has probably worked more than once.
Well, yeah, exactly. I think exactly that, Chris, because we were recounting last episode how we came across the book. It was the font and the color that made me be able to find it when I was frantically searching for this title. I couldn't find out. It was the font. So Chris, if you're probably right, it works because I found it. So yeah, I think it's a very unique typography and layout that they've obviously intentionally chosen, which is very interesting.
Brian?
Yeah, just wanted to comment on the color. So now in the more recent prints and editions, actually, we talk about the orange book, don't we? So orange in Hindu law is kind of denotes like the sacral chakra, the Swadhisthana, which is like in the navel, and that chakra is associated with like fire, and orange, like sannyasis like Paramhansa Yogananda and Sri Yukteswar wear orange, and it's actually ochre robes, or saffron stained robes, because it denotes the purity and the purifying effect of a fire, in that it has the power to transform and burn all waste matter and dross and leave something pure, perhaps free from impure stuff. So yeah, that's probably why I'm imagining that they've gone nowadays with the orange cover and the orange, back page, and orange is such a prominent feature of the current versions.
I wonder if that's a big difference, because surely the older versions were in black and white, right? So you didn't have any color on them. And now, yeah.
Well, we know that there's a blue. They used to have a blue book, didn't they?
They did have the blue book. Oh yeah, but I meant, okay. But I meant you wouldn't see his ochre robe, for
yeah,
example.
that's true. Yeah, and that color was added. Yeah, it was a colorized image, wasn't it? And we're going to talk about the image a bit later.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the back page. The back page is it has some beautiful images that are very often seen in an SRF context. Like you see the Last Smile, you see Swami Sri Yukteswar, you see Lake Shrine, you see Guruji at a event where he talks. This famous picture of him and Gandhi, this famous picture of him and Swami Sri Yukteswar, where he receives him back to India, and they both wear the garlands, and he comes basically back with this rock star, where he's being received like a rock star. The picture of him as a little boy, Mukunda, and a few others. Then there's a section where it says a life-changing book, and you have a few accounts of other people. Like you have the New York Times in there, you have Newsweek, and of course, everything very complimentary. And George Harrison is in there, which is interesting. Like to be honest, when I have had different versions of this book always in my house, but I haven't really gone through those until recently, until I prepared for this episode, I must say. And there's the George Harrison episode. I'm going to talk about it in a second. Chris, do you want to say something?
I wonder if there exists quotes from Steve Jobs that they could have used on this, because George Harrison takes up a lot of space, for compared to the other quotes that they've got, which are just 4 or 5 words, or just one word. Fascinating, a rare account. They're very, very simple. Then George Harrison has, a couple sentences in there. I just wondered, Steve Jobs. That's how I got into it. That's how so many people heard about it, or that was the link, that was the path in conversation as to how I heard about Yogananda. So I just wonder if there was something out there that they could have used, and maybe, or whether there was something out there is one thing, and whether there's something out there that they were allowed to use, maybe 2 separate questions to my mind. But yeah,
maybe something for a future print that's still to come. We don't know. But the story that George Harrison had, like he said, he always had a few autobiographies at home and he would keep handing them out. I've heard that story so many times by many devotees, and the fact that it also says it here on the book is like interesting. I just would have needed to read it there. There it is. Is it any of you doing that? Any of you have some extra autobiographies at home that they hand out? Like I think I got a few extra ones when I bought this one, because I like giving them as little gifts sometimes.
Yeah, they're so cheap as well, aren't they? How much are they in the US? They're like £8 or £9 here. Pretty cheap. Mine's just $8.50.
Yeah, I haven't. I want to do it. I want to have in Brazil. There's I have an eco village over in Brazil, and I want to create it almost as a yoga retreat to set it up for that. And I want to build a library, essentially, yoga books in general, but certainly Paramhansa Yogananda and the collection would go in there. So that is like on my list. Like I see that in my mind's eye somewhere. But right now I can say I haven't unfortunately done that because I've been all over the place in recent years. But it's such a great thing to be able to give someone, because it's like, to teach a man how to fish kind of idea in a way, like, you know, for a soul, such an amazing gift to be able to give. Priya?
Yeah, definitely agree with that. I always keep, for the last few years, I've kept maybe 3 or 4 just on my shelf, and then I tend to give it to people or leave it on a bookshelf. Like if there's like my local train station has got a book sharing club, so I just every now and then just pop one in there, and then usually it's gone the next day, which makes me feel pretty good. But I also wanted to just we glossed over the fact that the emblem of the Self-Realization Fellowship was on there, and the title Self-Realization Fellowship. So the emblem, according to their page, means it depicts the spiritual eye, showing the white star, which is in the middle, surrounded by rings of blue and golden light at the point between the 2 eyebrows, situated within a golden lotus flower. It signifies the meditating devotee's goal of opening the eye of divine perception, just as the open lotus is an ancient symbol of awakened spiritual consciousness. And lotus is quite a beautiful thing in India, because in like you'll have like the filthiest swamps, for example, and just out of it will just emanate this fantastic pure lotus, and you just imagine how is this lotus come out of this filth, and obviously that is metaphorically relevant for us because yeah, our lives we may be impure perhaps, but we can take a lot. We can come out of that at any time, if and when we do the work of growing, as it were, beyond the filth. But the other thing I wanted to comment on was Self-Realization Fellowship. I believe that.
Sorry, before we do.
Yeah.
Whenever I first saw this symbol, and I have been like drawing and doodling, not again at work, that symbol. I like when I'm working, you know, sometimes I might sit and draw that symbol. You see it everywhere, and often if you pay attention, you'll see it mainly with like police and maybe institutions around the world. They'll have that star symbol with a circle around it. It's everywhere, and it makes me think, wow, how much of a truth there is all over the world with this symbol. This Christ-centered, this consciousness that's pervading, you know, society in a secret way, because it's quite, you know, you say this to somebody that they might have thought you were mad, you know, hundreds of years ago when we were going through the last yugas. It's everywhere, that circle star symbol. It's beautiful. And after the first time I saw it with Yogananda, and it was described to you in the lessons, I think it's described somewhere there. You do see it everywhere, which is a really positive thing for me. It motivates me to think, okay, there's people out there on different paths, you know, they're walking different paths, but still this truth is universal. It's out there. So
yeah, that just wanted to also mention about that symbol, the tinge of lotus blue, opal blue that's in the, you know, inside the symbol, like surrounding the star. As I mentioned, it's related to the spiritual eye. But I also love that color. That color of blue. That's my favorite color, and I always pick blue things when I'm choosing fonts or whatever, or color of pens. And the SRF has really made this color their own, hasn't it? Like all their websites is covered with blue everywhere, and like the fonts are all blue. And yeah, I thought I'd comment on that. But self-realization, go on, Chris.
Is that correct? Just to add this, Krishna was blue, right? And there's the question, and I don't know what the answer is was he actually blue, or was it this aura that he had? Because I think the blue signifies some sort of clarity of action, or there's some kind of symbolic meaning in there, maybe from true energetic truths behind there. which I just wanted to throw out as well, because it always made me curious. Like, oh, there's a blue, like, you know, individual. Like, what was he, an alien? Was it, you know, what was he? Like, we're not blue, you know. Was he human? Was he something? So it always does make me wonder. But I think maybe that could be symbolized as well.
Yeah, Krishna apparently also means the dark one. So it could also mean that he was darker. But yeah, the fact that blue is associated with divinity, like the aura and things like that, is also true. But blue is also the Agna chakra, which is the spiritual eye, and the medulla, the polar opposite. So that's that chakra color association. So it could also be that. But yeah, look, we didn't also mention that the Self-Realization Fellowship is written on there, and that's obviously an important one, because that's the title of our organization, quite an apt title. Fellowship is what we're doing, and self-realization is our sadhana, I suppose, our spiritual practice. Yeah, Lauren?
Yeah, I'd like to go back to these photos that we have on the back page. A question that I'd have for all of you was, is this something that you noticed, and did you have any feelings towards it when you first got your copy? Yeah, I'll let you answer before I say anything from my perspective.
Certainly did notice it, because it wasn't in the previous prints. And it meant something a lot more to me now, because I've seen and we've podcasted about the Awake film. So virtually every single one of those photos, Chris, Mike and I can probably talk for an hour about each of those photos. So it means a lot to me now, knowing the history of each of those images. But as a new person, I would have just glossed over them, to be honest. But I think perhaps they've put them in there for historical reasons. They want to show that this is like, there's a lot of history behind this book, and perhaps that kind of vibe. I don't know.
And I think all those pictures, they're also in the book at some point, right? So they want to give you a glimpse of what's in the book before you even read it. I kept looking at the picture with the lion. Is that the lion that learned how to sing Om at the Kumbh Mela? Is that where this picture is from? Or is it a tiger?
No, I was trying to look for it in the Awake book, but it wasn't in the Awake book. So maybe it's in this book, but I haven't found it in the auto.
If a listener knows, let us know.
Yeah, is it the story where I can't remember, Yogananda goes to visit a spiritual individual who I can't name in that photo, and I think the story is that he had that fierce creature, sitting by his side purring like a kitten, and he just was in awe at this. Yogananda was like, wow, how does this come to be, because they're obviously fearsome creatures. So but I don't know, is that the same story you're talking about, Mike? Did they sing?
I think that's right. That's when he came back to India and went to the Kumbh Mela without Sri Yukteswar. And I think he saw a Swami there with like you said, with a big kitten.
Go on, Lauren, tell us.
Oh no, it was just, for me, I think when I first received the copy and I read the back page and I saw these pictures, you're reminded how real this account is that you're about to read. These are actual photographs taken in history, and the book is full of things that are not of the world that we may know it in our current state of consciousness. So I think it gives us that grounding nature of, this is reality that we're about to read, and even though there are things in there that might expand your mind beyond belief, that there is all truth in the book you're about to read. And I think those photographs, they really bring that home, for me at least.
Yeah, that's a unique perspective. I share that, and because obviously there's stories of ancient India. There's lots of magic and mystery, whereas this looks like it's relevant for today. All these images that are here. So yeah, that's a very good point. Incidentally, I found that line image in the Autobiography of Yogi. It's Swami. That person is Swami Krishnananda in the 1936 Kumbh Mela, Allahabad. So well done, Chris. With his tame vegetarian lioness that utters Om in a deep and attractive growl.
I But yeah, Mike got that right, just to correct the record on that. Not me. But, yeah, good memory. Mike's clearly read and reread the many editions.
Mike's memory is sharp, I tell you.
Yeah.
Don't know why you're giving a strange look, Mike. That's so, you know that's true. The amount of things that you've like reminded me of, that like the most minuscule detail.
Yeah, but I feel like my memories, it sometimes remembers the most random things, and then the most obvious ones completely blank on them.
As in the lessons, you know, Yogananda says to train yourself to remember the most ennobling qualities and memories. So that's just good practice that you've got going there, like putting the lessons to work.
I like that one. Priyank?
Yes, also we forgot to talk about the spine of the book. Spine, the all-important spine. Every bookshelf, every reader only picks the book from the spine before they choose. So there's on the spine of the book, there's the same standard pose picture of Paramhansa Yogananda and the AoY title and the spiritual SRF emblem again. So good, we covered all those 3 topics.
Yeah, and
it's a good spine.
Still on the back, we have a little section of text where it says it was named of the one of the 100 best books of the spiritual books of the 20th century, which is pretty great. I don't know how they measure that. I'm guessing readership, or how many they sold, or in how many languages it got translated into. And also, no, Priyank, you want to say something about this?
No, not about that. Something else, so you can finish that topic.
Oh, okay. Yeah, and the second part it mentions here again is that this is a complete edition and it's exclusively available by SRF, and that they have basically followed the wishes of the author. Good points.
And we obviously talked about all the editions and prints just previously. Chris, do you want to mention something about that before I talk about this other thing?
Yeah, sure. It's just a small point. Whenever I first read, and this is my own personal take, I had this soul quenching experience where, as it says here in the back page, with soul satisfying wisdom and endearing wit. That is exactly the soul satisfying wisdom. That is exactly my experience. It was like, I've said this before, like lost in the Sahara Desert, that it was like looking for something to drink. That was my soul with this, and this book really hit home for me. I was like, wow, like where's this been all my life? That was truly my experience. So yeah, words well picked on the back of the book. I didn't notice that before, actually. So,
but you wouldn't have noticed it because the previous prints don't have the same words. So these are potentially, these words, they'll change. For example, the current words are named the 100 best spiritual books of the 20th century. I think that's probably right on your print as well, Mike. And if we're in the 21st century and there's some new record that's been broken, then obviously we'd want to read about that. But interestingly, I just wanted to throw this out there. There's actually 2 logos. There's one which has got the golden and the blue, and the star. And then there's the same logo but hollowed out version like that. What do you prefer? The hollow SRF symbol or the golden old-fashioned traditional SRF symbol?
Show us that again, Greg.
It's hollow. Can you see?
Yeah, I've got it. Or the golden one, yeah.
Yeah. I know, Lauren, you'll prefer the golden one because I'm sure you love gold.
I do actually love gold. I don't know how you knew that. But I was just thinking. I was just thinking how sort of balanced I feel about them both. I don't feel a particular inclination towards either, but perhaps the one with colour is more eye-catching for a lot of people and may bear some particular emotion or feeling that it may rouse in them. But for me, it means the same.
Mike?
I think when you're a publisher, you probably want to have both and then be able to use them in different contexts. And I feel like on the front cover, they wanted to go with the more colorful, more bold version of it, and then on the back side, it seems more like a subtle place for adding a subtle version of it, and so it's good to have both, I guess.
Chris? Oh, you
Mike took the words right out of my mouth. It's nice to have both.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, the golden version is kind of like the complex kind of logos that we used to have back in the day. Like, I remember my university logo, University of Surrey, it had like a stag and like a shield and, you know, the conventional logos. And now they've just, in the current version of their logo, they've just got the stag's head, and that's associated with the university. So they've kind of gone from this complex shield, you know, golden arrangement, just to a very simple outline of a stag's head, you know. And here SRF have done a similar thing. I think they're going with like the conventions of how logos are these days. They're very simple. They're not like super colorful. They're like, you know, very easy to like, they're subtle but easy to remember, such as this outline of SRF is, you know, outside the outline of this SRF symbol is currently the naked version, as it were. Yeah, Lauren?
I've just noticed, and I've never seen this before, but if you look really closely at that symbol, the blue underneath, so you've got the blue circle with the star, and then you have the little blue dots underneath.
Yeah.
They are very small letters that say SRF.
Yes.
That may be very obvious, but I've never noticed that before. It's so small.
It's not that obvious. I only noticed because I've got a very high resolution for our marketing purposes. I had a very high resolution version of that image, and like I had very clearly SRF written on it. That's the only way I noticed. Otherwise, yeah, good point.
Wow.
It's got SRF written in the logo.
Well, that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. Do you know, for different people, maybe it stands out. One stands out more than the other. If you hold, you know, two different shades of color or different colors entirely, and, you know, is it the traditional, is it red or blue or something? What stands out to you more? And depending on your eye structure of your eyes, and I'm not going to go into all the cones and everything because I have no idea really, but maybe one stands out to the other. And whenever I look at this, it's quite nice to see the plain version of it, because to me, I look at it and I can maybe visualize that somehow more. I don't know, maybe I'm reading it into it too much, but seeing the circle there really kind of ingrains that in my mind. So yeah, it could work.
It's true, because like the 5-pointed star that, you know, that symbolizes the spiritual eye, it may not look exactly like that. Well, neither of us know, obviously. And that shade of blue may look more ethereal. So here, by putting it in press, you may limit someone, especially if someone's colorblind. If they see the colors slightly differently, then that would be quite a problem. If you're imagining a blue and you're seeing a red, and, you know, it's could be crazy. But yeah, so then that's a good point, Chris. And also below the naked logo, Mike, on your print, does it say the spiritual legacy of Paramahansa Yogananda on your print of the book, underneath the logo at the back? The spiritual legacy.
It does say that, yeah. It does.
The spiritual legacy.
In that same font. Yeah. Very nice.
Cool font. I think they actually, this is a font, I tried to use it once, and you have to buy this font. It's not a publicly available font. It's one of those fancy fonts you have to buy. Yeah, but interesting that they put the spiritual legacy. They just add it, so, you know. And that's also in the 2001 print that I've got as well, the same thing. I wonder why that's there. The spiritual legacy of Paramhansa Yogananda. Interesting, especially considering they took out the legacy section. Oh no, they didn't. Sorry, they took out the worldwide acclaim section from the previous edition, print, and just put some of them.
They
on
had
the back.
a small version of it on the back. Right?
Yeah, that's right. So I think that's probably a better way of doing it, because you don't want to read 3 pages of newspaper article headlines. You'd rather just read 3 or 4 at the back, right? I think they've done a good job there. Because the 2001 print, it's got like it's virtually an essay of stuff to read on the back, and I don't think anyone's going to read all that, are
they? People barely read books. Yeah.
If you read the whole book, you might as well read the back side as well.
Yeah. But if you're going to pick up the book and you see that, you may just put it down based on the volume of text on that back page. Whereas now they've made it very clean, haven't they? It's very, very subtle. Everything's very subtle and simple on there.
I remember back in the day when bookstores still existed, or I mean, they still exist, but more than today. I would love to just go browse there. And the backside was always the thing I started reading. I wanted to see anyone interesting that I know has recommended the book, or anyone and any key takeaways that they want to put here. If the backside wasn't interesting, if the backside wasn't interesting, it wasn't very likely for me to open the book and start reading it, I guess. Yeah. All right, there's one more big thing we have to talk about. I guess we call it the elephant in the room. It's the picture of Guruji on the front cover, and we all know this picture. It's known as standard pose. We're very familiar with it because it's also on our altars, and it's also in many different SRF publications. You will see this picture, and I would say putting this picture there in this size was done for a reason, because there's all those stories of people, not least Lauren mentioned something similar, but that people look at the Autobiography of a Yogi, they look at the face of Yogananda and go like, this guy, either I've seen this guy before, or this guy somehow looks familiar, or somehow he looks interesting and I want to know what he has to say. So they really want to put this out there, because might be that people had Guruji as their guru in their previous lives, and there's a moment of recognition or something similar. Yes, Chris?
I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who hasn't been exposed to yoga, or is looking at this fresh. There's somebody who is clearly, what do you get? Like a picture speaks 1,000 words, and you look at this picture and it probably speaks, volume, a whole book in itself. But his long hair, he's young, and his eyes just, they just bring you in. It's very probably mysterious to a lot of people, and that, at least at its maybe rudimentary sense, at its most fundamental sense, is going to tell you, okay, what a yogi is, this mysticism, and there's a part of us all that wants to know truth, and maybe that sort of helps, catch some people who might be kind of on the fence. Maybe they don't know anything about it. It's just a great picture, and he's clean shaven there as well. Maybe that's something we haven't talked about too much before, but he, I believe, shaved on the boat over to America. He was advised to shave, right? Because the people in the US at the time, very much clean shaven folks, wearing suits and very much that way. So that clean shaven face, at least, I'm sure they probably thought of this like, this is the image we want to present to the world in some way. But beautiful picture. My favorite. Lauren.
Well, it's funny you would say that, Chris, about putting yourself in shoes of someone who hadn't been exposed to yoga. That was me. So when I saw this picture, it changed my life. And I remember that this book was my altar before I had one of my own, or even when I first began the lessons. I would even carry this book around with me, because I just felt this connection with this image, that magnetism. So yeah, you're definitely right. It's very potent and carefully chosen, evidently, because you see it and it's all there, just right in front of you. There's nothing else. So yeah. very special.
Yeah. In terms of his long hair and shaved face, Chris, I read somewhere that people like, especially sannyasis, that people that are new to the path of monkhood, they shave off their heads and keep it shaved. Like once a month, they'll shave their hair off, and so that's to keep the energy rising up to here, because you're not yet realized, as it were. But once you become realized, that was obviously irrelevant. So you want to sustain the energy at the highest chakras, and hence you retain your hair and you don't cut your hair. And that's potentially the reason why Guruji didn't cut his hair even from a young age, right? He was quite long. Yeah. But yeah, you're right. In terms of the shaved hair, perhaps it was shaved facial hair. He did keep it before, and we've got some pictures of him with facial hair, but he probably potentially saved it because he knew he was going to be addressing, highbrow societies, and shaved long hair probably was one thing, but unkept beard and mustache would probably be push people right off the edge. I'm not going to this. Yeah, Chris.
My old mum, my mother would say, wow, he's very feminine. She maybe glanced and thought it was a woman, because not traditionally do we have in this, quote unquote Western world, this UK, US kind of world, men with long hair. Speaking as a man now with long hair, sometimes you get these comments like, oh, it's quite feminine. But there is something to this as well for Yogananda's image. For me, it speaks volumes that he balanced this masculine and feminine energy. He was a master. So to me, it makes sense. He had this kind of feminine, softer feminine quality to him, because he, maybe he simply had that mastery over these elements. But that much I don't really know too much about, but that's maybe a topic. If somebody else knows about, please do share, because I'm curious about it.
Yeah, he was certainly in tune with the love aspect, the loving nature, motherly loving nature. And I think his most favored form of God was the Divine Mother aspect, which is the unconditional love aspect. So you kind of see that in the image, don't you? And the femininity is something certainly that I remember recalling when I first saw this image of Guruji, and I remember he looks really strange, and it was intriguing for me, and that was one thing that probably made me open the book and actually go into it.
Little did you know, Mike and I have confessed a couple of times on the podcast that if you look at the image given on a given day, you might see looking back at you a different type of energy. So it's one of those pictures that the eyes almost follow you in the room, and it could be more stern one day, and it could be just forgiving and loving the next. And whether that's simply projection or whether that picture is alive, I would argue the latter, but beautiful. Such a great picture.
And let's talk about. Oh, Chris, do you want to add something still?
No, sorry. No, I know Prank had a question, but maybe you can jump on it.
Yeah. So we've gone through this in the last series as well. So the picture was actually taken at the Palace Hotel in San Francisco when he was on tour very early on in 1924. So he came to the United States in 1920, and 1924 is just a few years afterwards. And shout out to hotel staff photographer Hugo Schreiber, who took that picture. Very well done. Very grateful to have that. Priyank?
Yeah, this was after his East to West tour, which took him like a couple of years, and then that's when he landed in Los Angeles, and that's where he ended up staying and establishing his principal ashram there, right?
Nice.
Yeah, we're going to talk, later on about the difficulty. A certain person had to take the picture of the Gary Masha. And obviously, this gent that he didn't have as much of a problem taking Yogananda's picture. But yeah.
And it would have been in black and white, would it not, Mike?
Absolutely, yeah. So I don't think there is real color footage of Guruji. It's all colorized. And if you take the book, you are intrigued by the picture, you open it, and then on page 1, you have it again, that same picture. And in the original black and white, and underneath it, you see Paramahansa Yogananda's signature. Very beautiful, very big, very evenly spaced. Like, there's some people who read into signatures. They kind of analyze you based on your signature. And I wonder what people would say about this one. But it looks
audience
very
members,
beautiful handwriting.
Listeners, if you know about that, please do comment. That'd be quite interesting to know about, wouldn't it? And he also put a line and like a quote mark or something afterward, like 2 dots. Quite cool. Very cool signature, isn't it?
Yeah, there is a story that I heard, and I don't know if that's true at all. So I don't want to spread any false information. I'm just gonna throw it out there. So I heard that he would actually call himself Paramhansa Yogananda without the A, and in his signature there was no A, and they later added it in, so it made sense. If anyone has heard that before, if nobody has heard that before, then maybe it's also completely not true. But I heard that from fellow devotees at some point.
I'm gonna
go on, Chris.
I'm gonna add my own psychological analysis of this by adding one comment. That I love the line goes from left to right, from lower to up. It's very positive, uplifting. Because he represents to me somebody who's uplifting. He's the guru, he uplifts us, and that's my 2 cents of a very unofficial analysis of that. Lauren, jump in.
I think also it's going back to the back page and now this page, because it's his pen, his handwriting, it brings that reality to us again. Wow, yeah, he's made this signature, and here it is on this page under his picture, which is quite amazing. But also, I've often wondered this. I don't know if any of you've noticed, but it seems to me with these eyes, that may not be correct, but the M's and the N's are upside down in a Western lettering.
Is this how you write when you have cursive text though? Is this not how you write? Like if you look at the R, the R is this inverse R as well.
Yes.
So I think in cursive handwriting, and my wife loves cursive handwriting with calligraphy pens and things like that. So I think this might be how you write.
I see.
Yeah.
It's been a point of intrigue.
Yeah. The S looks like some sort of sigma sign as well. There's no The interesting, Mike, the A discussion you're talking about, Paramhansa. In Sanskrit and English now, there's a variation in pronunciation. So in Hindi nowadays, we don't say the R sounds often. Like I think it's called Sandhi or something like that. What happened is that the vowel sound gets disappeared. So in Sanskrit it would be Paramahansa, Parama. But nowadays in India they may just say Paramhansa. But Sanskrit is Paramahansa. So I don't know if you can hear the difference. But so it's a definition of like if you're speaking classical like language, or if you're speaking the modern day equivalent, and similarly with the spelling, if you're going to say Paramhansa, then you wouldn't have the A. But if you're going to actually be to the letter of the like scriptural, mantra, you'd have to say the R sound.
Okay, pranam. I get a similar sound.
No, that's a Pranam is two A's, so that's an R sound. And R, two different sounds. So every consonant has an in it. So it's not like this isn't same in Latin, right? It's not Italian languages. There's always an sound after consonants, and Mike can probably confirm this. Like say an Italian word, you'll hear the English equivalent won't have the sound, whereas the Italian one, because it's closer to probably Latin, it has the sound. And Latin and Sanskrit have the same Indo-European root, and that's where the pure language, etc., the original languages come in. There you go. This is probably a segue.
Lesson.
Segue. Actually, not so much of a segue.
It might be a segue because Chris said pranam, and I feel like we have done this this first section of the book justice. We went from the editions that exist, the title, the cover, the back page, and the standard pose. Any last words, Priyank?
Yeah, under the black and white image of your print, does it say Brahma Avatar, Incarnation of Love? See page 369.
It does say that, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we mentioned that he was very devotional in universal, unconditional love. So we call him a Brahma Avatar, an incarnation of love, and hence perhaps the femininity in his image, masculine and feminine being balanced, is present in the image that we have of him, the most famous image of him, the standard pose image.
I think Sri Yukteswar mentions that at some point, right? Where he often scolded his devotees, right? And he said, "You will be much nicer to your students, right?" Maybe that's also his Prema Avatar aspect.
Yes, definitely.
He was an incarnation of wisdom, right? Sri Yukteswar.
Gyan
Avatar. Yeah.
Avatar.
Yeah.
Nice.
All right, everybody. So thank you all for. This is already episode 2. We're already in the middle of our Autobiography of a Yogi series, line by line. And stay tuned for the next episode, where we will go into the spiritual legacy part, acknowledgement, and much more. Jai Guru, everybody.
Jai
Guru.